And let's finish the 8th chapter of the Wolves of Willoughby Chase. Sylvia has gotten very sick at the orphans' asylum that they're trapped in, but Simon and Pattern are attempting to rescue Bonnie and Sylvia. They have a key to the coal room, and the plan is for Bonnie and Sylvia to escape with Simon to London, where he goes to sell his geese, and intercept Aunt Jane, Sylvia's aunt. So Mrs. Brisket has gone away. Her daughter is left in charge, but she wants to go to the fair, and we will pick up there. "Here, you!" she called, seeing Bonnie hurrying past. "Where are you going with that hangdog look? Come here!" Bonnie came, as if unwillingly. "What have you got in your pocket?" Bonnie made no reply. Diana thrust in her hand and let out a shriek of disgust. She withdrew it and stared at her fingers, which were dripping with egg yolk. "Thief! Miserable little thief! Stealing eggs from my mother's hen house!" She raised the dripping hand and slapped Bonnie's face with it. 6 months ago, Bonnie would have slapped her back, and heartily, but she was learning patience and self-command. To be embroiled in a struggle with Diana was not part of her plan, though she longed to box the girl's ears. "I was taking it to Sylvia," she said steadily. "Your mother is starving her to death. She has had nothing to eat all day but 2 raw onions." "Is that any business of yours? Very well," said Diana, white with temper. "Since you think you can look after Sylvia so well, you shall look after her. You can look after each other in the coal cellar. Alice, help me shut them in." Alice and a couple of the larger, worse-natured girls willingly did so. Others remonstrated as Bonnie was pushed and Sylvia, still in her nightclothes, half carried into the dark, dirty place. "You shouldn't do it, Miss Diana. Sylvia's ill. It will make her worse," exclaimed Emma. "Hold your tongue! Who asked you to interfere?" shouted Diana, and slapped her. The door was locked and the key put in its accustomed place on Mrs. Brisket's parlor mantelpiece. Then, after making sure that everyone was in a properly cowed frame of mind, Diana wrapped herself in a velvet cloak and went out to the bazaar, locking the front door and taking the key with her. Meanwhile, Bonnie in the coal cellar was congratulating herself on the success of her idea as she swiftly helped to dress the trembling, shivering Sylvia in her new, warm clothes. "There, Sylvia, now don't cry. There's a lamb, for I feel sure Simon will have some good plan and will be able to take us to a place where you can be properly cared for. Don't cry." But Sylvia was too weak to hold back her tears. She sat obediently on a large lump of coal while Bonnie prepared to change her own clothes. But before she could do so, there was a creaking of the lock, and the door swiftly opened. Not the door to the garden, but the one through which they had been thrust in. A head poked round it. It was Emma's. "Bonnie, Sylvia, are you all right? You can come out and get warm. Diana's out and Alice has gone to bed." Bonnie felt tears prick her eyes at the courageous kindness on the part of Emma. But how ill-timed it was. At any minute Simon might arrive, and she did not want anyone to know that he was helping with their escape. She whispered to Sylvia, "Wait there, Sylvia, for 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, and then I'll be back," and ran swiftly to the cellar door. Outside stood Emma and a large number of children, all deathly silent. In the passage that led from the kitchen, one of them pointed upward, meaning that they must make no sound for fear of Alice. Bonnie was amazed and touched. She had had no idea how popular her bright face and friendly ways had made her with the other children. In the fairly short time she had been at Mrs. Brisket's, impulsively she hugged Emma. "Emma, I won't forget this, if ever I get away from this hateful place. And oh, I pray it will be tonight," she said to herself. "I'll send back somehow, and get you out too, but Sylvia and I must leave the cellar. If Mrs. Brisket or Diana come back, you would get into dreadful trouble." She looked at the children's anxious faces and wished that she could do something for them. Suddenly she had an idea. She ran to Mrs. Brisket's parlor and brought out the large hamper of cheese which the headmistress kept for rewarding tale-bearers. "Here, quick, girls, eat this up." She tossed out the chunks of cheese in double handfuls to the ravenous children. "Cheese! Oh, Bonnie! Cheese! Wonderful cheese!" They had gobbled up most of the savory lumps before Emma suddenly exclaimed, "But what will Mrs. Brisket say?" "I'll take care of that," said Bonnie grandly. She had been scribbling on a sheet of paper. "This is to pay for the cheese," and now she signed it with her name, fetched the guinea piece from her jacket pocket, and put it with the paper in Mrs. Brisket's writing desk. "There, she'll be angry, but she will see that I am the one to blame. Now, Emma, You must lock us up in the cellar again and put back the key. Yes? As Emma protested. I promise that it will be best in the end, and she nodded vigorously to show that she meant it, and went back into the cellar. With great reluctance, Emma locked the door again. Instantly, Bonnie flung off her brown overall and hustled on her boy's clothes, which felt very thick and strange, but comfortable. Oh, how funny I must look. I wish we could see ourselves. Here, Sylvia, I saved a piece of cheese for you. Try to eat it. It will give you some strength. We must take our aprons with us. It won't do to leave them behind, or they will guess that we have got other clothes, and may be in disguise. She bundled them up and tucked them in her capacious pockets. Now for the key. Just for one awful moment it seemed as if the somewhat roughly made key would not open the outer door. However, wrapping a fold of her jacket over it and wrenching it with both hands, Bonnie got it round and raised the flap. A gust of snowflakes blew into her face. Good, it's snowing, so much the better. We shan't leave any footprints now, Sylvia. You had better have my coat as well as your own. She buttoned it on her own cousin, who was really too ill and weak to make any objection, and half pulled, half hoisted her up the slope, down which the coal was poured. Then, swiftly, she relocked the door and put the key in her pocket, and urged Sylvia toward the gate with an arm round her shoulders. We can hide in a laurel bush, she whispered. There's a thick one beside the front railings. Then, if Mrs. Brisket or Diana should come back, they won't see us. I can hear the town clock striking 10. Simon should be here at any moment. And indeed, as they reached the railings, they heard his voice whispering, Miss Bonnie? Miss Sylvia? Is that you? Yes, it's us, Bonnie called back quickly and ran to open the gate. And that is the end of Chapter 8.